Hi, Year 6. Right, today's word of the day is the word roister. Okay, it means to enjoy oneself or celebrate in a noisy or boisterous way. Okay, I think of the word roister when I think of boys celebrating on the playground after one of them has scored a goal. Maybe they all get jumpy and they jump on each other. The girls get they can roister when they get overexcited. It is a word that is quite old-fashioned, so therefore fits very well with the whole Oliver Twist, and is used in that text. It's a verb, so it's a doing word. To roister is to sort of be boisterous and cheery. So it's not an angry word, it's a cheerful word. It's a word you might use when you are celebrating something in a loud and boisterous kind of way. So boisterous means like jumping up and down or something like that. I might use it in my sentence, would be Mrs. Ferguson got cross that her children were roistering instead of getting on with their home learning. I think that is something that I can honestly say is true. Okay, so have a go at using the word of the day today. It's R-O-I, it's not a Y, it's that oi sound, but with a Y, I, sorry. The other thing that you can do is add different endings. So you can, he roistered is a past tense. The progressive is roistering. He was roistering, he is roistering, or she. And she roisters as she watches the X Factor. I don't know. Okay, it's a word that isn't used loads these days, but it's a good one. I like it. Okay, so don't forget to, on top of your English, please write your sentence using the word roister so I can see that you understand it and that you've had a go at using it. Okay, today we are taking a break from a lot of the comprehension that we've been doing over the last couple of days. We are instead going to be looking at Oliver Twist as an example. Because what we're going to be doing by the end of the project is writing our own character descriptions. And today we are going to be comparing two different descriptions of the same character and deciding which one we like better and which bits we can borrow. Because on Monday, we're going to have a live lesson and we're going to be doing a shared write. So we are going to be looking at the character of the Artful Dodger. Now, this character is really important on Oliver's journey, and he only crept up in the end of chapter 3, which we read together yesterday. Now, we are reading a copy of Oliver Twist, which is abridged, which means it has been shortened, okay? Other things that have changed in our copy is that the language has been made more easily understandable because our copy is for school children. Oliver Twist was originally written in the 19th century, so in Victorian times, 18 something, sort of 1850s, by a man called Charles Dickens. And originally Charles Dickens wrote for newspapers, and his stories were serialized, so they were published weekly in the newspapers. They weren't actually published all together in one go as a book. The book of Oliver Twist that we have is a lot thinner than the original copy of Oliver Twist. And it's just to make it easier for you to read and enjoy, easier for us to teach. But what we lose is some of that lovely, lovely character description. So today, what I thought we would do is we are going to recap the character description from the end of chapter 3 that we read yesterday and compare it to the original description that Charles Dickens wrote in the book. Okay? So what I want you to do is listen to both descriptions, and I will be sharing this second description with you, and I want you to decide which one you like better. So first of all, the description from yesterday from this book is, okay, after a time though, he became dimly aware of a boy on the other side of the road, watching him, sizing him up. Oliver closed his eyes. "Watch him, my dear," said a voice. "What's doing?" The boy had crossed the street and was standing in front of Oliver now, his hands on his hips. He wore a man's coat which reached down to his ankles, and he folded the sleeves right back to let his hands see daylight. There was a hat balanced on the very corner of his head. Every time it threatened to slip off, the boy twitched it back into place with a jerk of his head. He had sharp, dark eyes and a grin like April Fool's Day. "Pleased to meet you. How's things, my dear? Running away from the law, is ya? Ain't we all? Fancy a bite to eat and a glass of something warming? Dare say you're looking for somewhere to sleep tonight. I know just the place." He reached out a hand. "Jack Dawkins is the name, though there's some that call me the Artful Dodger." Okay, right. So that is the Artful Dodger. Now, I am going to share with you the text here of the Artful Dodger, which was written by Charles Dickens. This is the whole text. This is the unabridged. They haven't taken anything out, okay? So here we go. Oliver had been crouching on the cold stone step for some time, wondering at the great number of public houses. Every other house in Barnet was a tavern, large or small, gazing listlessly at the rickety coaches as they passed through. At once he began observing an uncanny boy who had passed him carelessly some minutes before, surveying Oliver most earnestly from the opposite side of the way. The boy strolled close up to Oliver, greeted cheerfully. "Hello, my covey, what's the row?" The boy who addressed this inquiry to the young wayfarer was about his own age, but one of the strangest looking boys that Oliver had ever seen. He was snub-nosed, flat-browed, common-faced boy enough, and as dirty as a juvenile, but he had about him all the airs and manners of a man. He was short of his age, with rather bow legs and little, sharp, ugly eyes. His hat was stuck on top of his head so lightly that it threatened to fall off every moment, and would have done so very often if the wearer had not had the knack of every now and then giving his head a sudden twitch which brought it back to its old place again. He wore a man's coat which reached nearly to his heels. He turned the cuffs back halfway up his arm to get his hands out of the sleeves, apparently with the ultimate view of thrusting them into the pockets of his corduroy trousers, for there he kept them. He was altogether as roistering and swaggering as a young gentleman as ever stood 4'6", or something less, in his bluchers. After minutes of gentle conversation, Oliver declared his hunger. "You want grub?" the young gentleman questioned. "Grub you shall have. I only own one bob and a magpie, but as far as it goes, I'll fork out and stump. Up with your pins. There, now then, Maurice." Assisting Oliver to rise, the young gentleman took him to an adjacent chandler's shop, where he purchased the sufficiency of ready-dressed ham and half-quarter loaf. He yanked out a portion of the crumb carelessly, stuffed it into his mouth greedily, and placed the ham inside the hole. Taking the bread under his arm protectively, the mysterious youth turned into a small public house where Oliver devoured a hearty meal. Whilst eating, the green-eyed man stared inquisitively. "Suppose you need a place to stay tonight?" The gentleman raised his brow, revealing the odd crease within his forehead. "I've got to be in London tonight. I know as a respectable old gentleman what'll give you lodgings for nothing," he declared. This unexpected offer of shelter was too tempting to resist, and led to a more friendly and confidential dialogue, from which Oliver discovered his name was Jack Dawkins, or Artful Dodger, as his companions called him. Without lacking concentration from the continuing conversation, Oliver noticed Jack's smile climbing further up his pale cheeks as he spoke about his own adventures in London. Despite being unnerved by the idea of befriending a bewildering stranger, Oliver was beginning to feel at ease with this cheeky, mysterious man. It felt like he might be the light at the end of the tunnel. So I want to think about, which one do you like better? Which one do you like best? Which is the best? Is it the first very short one where he does all of the talking, or is it the second long one? Now, if you're in school, perhaps you want to pause the video now and have a little chat about it and see if you can decide which one you like best. If you're at home, then you're not going to be able to do that. I think that although the first version, this version here, is easier to understand and does a pretty good way of taking bits of the second version, like the hat where he twitches his head and things like that. I don't think it really gives us as much detail about Dodger as the original version. Because what Charles Dickens has managed to do is he has told us about Dodger in 3 different ways. And what we're going to look at is those 3 different ways. And we're going to use it to box it up so that when tomorrow not tomorrow, on Monday, when we are doing our live lesson and writing a description of Dodger together, we are able to magpie some words that we really like and apply them in our own way. So let's have a look now at the original again, and we are going to find these bits that we like best. So here we go. Okie dokie. So the first way that Charles Dickens uses this text is he uses it to show us what he looks like. So the first thing we're going to concentrate on is looks and what he looks like. So what he's dressed like and his character, how that kind of comes out. So let's have a look at this. We discover that the boy is about his own age, so same age of Oliver, but he's kind of strange. And we have this really clear description here: snub-nosed, flat-browed, common-faced boy. So he's his nose is a bit squished. His brow, this is your brow here, is flat as opposed to, I don't know, sticking out. And he just looks like every boy that you see. He doesn't stand out particularly. He's as dirty as a juvenile, so as dirty as a kid. Okay, a juvenile is a child, so he's just dirty in that kind of dirty kind of way. But he had about him all the airs and manners of a man. So although he is a child, he talks like a grown-up. And I'm sure we all know people who are a bit like that talk like a grown-up, even though they're children. So that sort of tells us that there's this, I don't know, clashing of his character, that he looks like a kid and he's quite short and everything, but the way he speaks is sort of a bit more knowing and a bit more grown up. It also tells us that he has bow legs. Okay, so bow legs can be a sign, and it means where they kind of bend outwards, can be a sign of a disease called rickets, where people don't eat enough vitamin C. Okay, that generally comes from fresh fruit even, and vegetables. And in the 19th century, getting fresh fruit and veg was a problem, particularly if you were really, really poor, like Dodger is clearly. And so, although it's not saying that he has always been poor, it's kind of giving us a hint that he has always been poor and that he doesn't have a great diet. It also says he has sharp, ugly eyes. Okay, so that sort of also tells us that there is something not great about Dodger. Should we trust him? He's got these ugly eyes, he's got all these manners of a grown-up, and yet he's a child, and that, he's got sharp, ugly eyes. So maybe we shouldn't entirely trust him. Maybe it's a signpost that Dodger isn't quite all that he seems. So that's what he looks like. We start off with what he looks like, his facial features. Then we talk about his clothes. So he talks about the top hat, and then he talks about the man's cloak. What does that tell us about Dodger? It tells us that the coat is stolen, doesn't it? It's probably not his. I'm assuming that he hasn't got it from a parent, although maybe he could have done. Okay, so he's got this coat. It's much too big for him. It reaches nearly to his heels because he's only titchy, and he has to roll the cuffs back. just to be able to get his hands out, which he then stuffs in his pockets, which is a kind of quite quite a boyish kind of thing to do, a childish thing to do. Okay, he's 4'6", which is probably a bit shorter than you guys. Okay, so he's not very big, he's not very tall, he's quite undernourished, he's not well fed, and yet his inside, his personality is almost bigger than his body. That's what I get from here. Now, what I would like to do is I would like to be able to, let me see if I can do this, is I'm going to start a new document and I'm going to share this with you right now. There we go. And I am going to title it Artful. Okay, and this is the beginning of me starting my boxed up plan. Okay, so first of all, I am going to write the word looks, because of the three things that I'm going to look at, looks is going to be the one I'm going to. Here we go. Artful project looks. I'm also going to change this. That's because I like it. Okay, so looks. What things did I particularly like from that text? Well, I liked the fact that he was snub-nosed. I'm going to steal that. I like the fact that he was cheerful. I didn't highlight that before, but it was mentioned that he was cheerful. Snub-nosed, cheerful. I love the hat thing with the hat and the twig. I think I can definitely put that into my character description later. Even if I'm writing a modern version about it, I might still have my Artful Dodger having a hat and a twitch. I'm also going to add in that small, but likes to tend to be a grown-up. Okay, are there any other things, any other words? Let me have a quick look. Sharp, ugly eyes, shall I take that? No, maybe not. Right, okay, right. So now what I want us to do here is go back to the original. Here we go. And then we can have a look at this. Right, so the second way Charles Dickens talks about Dodger and uses him in a character description is through words, through speech, okay? And it tells us an awful lot about him again, okay? So after minutes of gentle conversation, Oliver declared his hunger. You want grub, okay? So grub is a slang word meaning food, and it's Cockney rhyming slang. So it tells us that Dodger speaks in a very kind of relaxed type of way, and that he's probably been in London for a lot of his life. And in fact, we go on and we find out that he has. Okay. The other thing that gives away that he has lived in London a long time is this grub you shall have. Okay. This idea of him dropping the H of have. He doesn't speak properly. He speaks in sort of like this all right, geezer kind of way, a bit like EastEnders, okay? And that tells us where he's from and the fact that he's not posh, okay? If we were under any kind of mistaken idea that Artful Dodger was posh, this kind of tells us he's definitely not. In the olden days, in the Victorian times, the upper classes, they all spoke like the Queen, and the down at heel all spoke like all right, you know, so, and that's how it's reflected in the fiction and in the dialogue that is written. Okay, he also uses words like bob, which is about 5p. Okay, so that's again a bit of slang, and it just sort of shows us his character, that he uses all these slang terms and talks in that kind of very relaxed, confident way. About forking out. Or fork out and stump up, which means it's Cockney rhyming slang for like pay up. Okay, so the fact is he talks in this slang type way all the time. The other thing is what he says. So he says, I hasn't essentially cutting through it is grub you, I'll get you money, I'll get you food. I haven't got much money, but what I've got I'll give to you. And that tells us something nice about Dodger's character is that he's generous. And quite frankly, Oliver hasn't met anybody generous before. So imagine how amazing that would be to finally meet this person that is generous. So when we are doing our writing, I'm going to add that in. Right, I'm going to write 1 and 2 and 3 here, because when we are done here, I want you to take this document, which is on the DB Primary webpage, and I want you to add 3 more things to the looks list that you are going to take from the Charles Dickens original. All right, speech here. And then what am I going to take? So slang. So I'm going to take Bob, talking about got a Bob, and I might use the word have instead of have, quite like that. And okay. What else do I like? He is generous. Okay. Now there is a bit more speech further down, I think. So if you can, I'd like you to pick out 2 different bits from that as well, to put in, and then we can use that in our shared. Right. Okay, last of all, last thing to look at is getting to know more about his personality through his actions. So we have done his looks, we've done how he speaks and what he says, and what how that describes his character. Now through his actions, because they say actions speak louder than words. Okay, so in this last part here, it talks about him staring inquisitively at Oliver, okay, and that tells us that he's very interested in him. Now, it also gives an idea if somebody looks at you inquisitively, they're kind of questioning, and it gives us an idea that perhaps Dodger is quite clever. He maybe is interested in Oliver. We're not kind of sure what to make of it. He's not looking at him questioningly like he's trying to size him up, but inquisitively like he wants to know more. So it's quite a careful choice of words. Okay. Let's see. What else does this part here? The unexpected offer of shelter was too tempted to resist and led to a more friendly, confidential dialogue from which, so confidential tells us that he doesn't share this information with everybody. And he's even more friendly. I mean, how could Dodger get more friendly? He's bought this stranger food, but yeah, he's telling him more. The other thing is he talks about Jack's smile climbing further up his pale cheeks. Dodger clearly loves his life in London and what he gets up to, of which more in chapter 4, which we're going to read on Monday. And he's definitely this positive, cheerful person, which makes it easily believable that Oliver agrees to go off with him, despite not knowing him or knowing anything about him. So for the last part then, we've done speech and all that sort of stuff. We are going to look at actions. So actions that I am going to note down that I like, and that is he is inquisitive, not inquisitive, inquisitive, and he smiles a lot. Ooh, smiles a lot. Okay. Now I'm going to leave 2 spaces for you to fill in some other bits. You don't have to use the same sections, so you can choose an action that he does in the first chunk and put it into this part. In the same way, you can use speech from the bottom bit and put it into the middle part. Okay, so I just want you to fill it in. Now, it's important that you do this because on Monday we are going to be doing a shared write together, and I need your answers. I'm going to take your answers and use them to help write my character, and it's going to be a year 6 one. So our character description of the Artful Dodger. You need to get this done. You need to fill in this sheet. Now, if you are not able to print or open the Word document, or you've got any problems, then you can write it down. What is most important is that you use looks, speech, and actions. Those are the 3 things that are going to create our character description. We're not just going to go, oh, he had red hair and a blue hat. We're going to talk about how he, we're going to describe him through how he talks and what he does. Okay, so that is today's challenge. This Artful Dodger description I'm going to save now, and I'm going to put on DB Primary for you to fill in. The Artful Dodger description, the original one, will also be on there. This classic text will also be on there. Have a look at them and work through them, and then as ever, give in your work and make sure you email it to me. If you have any questions or any worries, then please get in touch, and I will do my best to help you. Apart from that, that is all. Have a great weekend, and I shall see you 9 a.m. on Monday for our Year 6 English lesson. Okay, have a great weekend, and stay safe, stay inside, and hopefully it'll snow.